In 1980, a mysterious incident took place in the English town of Todmorden. 56-year-old Zygmunt Adamski left his house and vanished without a trace. 5 days later, his body was discovered on top of a pile of coal. He was dressed in a neat suit, yet his shirt, watch, and wallet were all missing. His hair appeared to have been cut after his disappearance, and strange burns covered his head and neck, coated with an unknown substance. The coroner was never able to determine the exact origin. The official cause of death was heart failure. The story gained further attention thanks to police officer Alan Godfrey, who had taken part in the investigation, later claiming to have seen an unidentified flying object and described a bizarre experience he recalled under hypnosis. Godfrey also alleged that a certain inspector had pressured him not to speak publicly regarding the case, complaining that he was being surveilled and his phone calls monitored. To this day, the mystery of Zygmunt Adamski remains unsolved. It's a classic story from the world of UFOlogy. Over the centuries, the image of aliens has become firmly embedded in mainstream culture, eventually turning into a cliche itself, from large-scale invasions like Independence Day to green humanoids with black eyes. This is the case for many once scary entities that we've all been collectively desensitized to. The undead, vampires, werewolves, etc., cryptids of yesteryear. Now let's take a look at this.
What is the next step of the operation?
This is a viral meme known as Locked In Alien, a short AI-generated video in which a strangely modeled alien, styled like a breaking news broadcast, responds to the phrase, "What is the next step of the operation?" Because of the alien's uncanny appearance, the psychedelic soundtrack, and the unknown language that runs throughout the clip, the viewer experiences a sense of unnaturalness, a unique vibe that feels distinctly AI-generated. Thanks for watching up to this point, and let's start this episode of Wevolution.
In the year 1999, a corpse descends from the cosmos.
Midwest's Angelica is an analog horror series created by AQ Studio, telling the story of events that take place between 1985 and 2000. The plot begins when scientists at the National Aeronautics and Space Administration detect an unusual cosmic object near Jupiter. Preliminary research reveals that the object is biological in nature and appears to be the cause of something enormous. Designated as AZ-001, it approaches Earth in 1999 and detaches a portion of its body, later referred to as the Alpha Chunk. The fragment crashes into the United States onto Starfield Ranch in Nebraska. This event marks the beginning of a catastrophe that ultimately destroys the country. The Alpha Chunk begins emitting an infection later named Starkill. It assimilates any biomass it touches, connecting it to the hive mind of the supposedly AZ-001. Through the infected, we learn the object's true name, Azazel. Beyond its biological effects, Starkill also functions like a religion, complete with a rigid hierarchy and massive biomass-based structures formed from assimilated victims. These structures produce combat entities whose sole purpose is to expand the infection further. There are 3 types of structures. Altars are small accumulations of biomass that generate the lower Starkill lifeforms, such as the phantoms and wretches. A phantom is nearly indistinguishable from a human, infiltrating enemy lines before eventually transforming into a wretch. A wretch is a tentacled humanoid that serves as the primary infantry force of Starkill. More advanced than altars are temples, larger biomass structures that are able to create stronger Starkill entities. Among them are the Wraiths, towering combat organisms up to 200 feet tall. Revenants, airborne entities that use helium bladders to float while dispersing massive amounts of spores to infect entire population centers. The most advanced structures, and the ones central to the story of AZ-001, are the 7 Overtures. These are able to produce the pinnacle of Starkill evolution, the Titans, gigantic Starkill entities that walk on 2 narrow legs and possess immense physical power. Special mention must also be given to those who carry the word of this god, the 3 Apostles. The first apostle is Nero, a key character in the story who mutates after witnessing the truth of AZ-001. He spreads his message and brings about the so-called apotheosis. Anima appears as a luminous humanoid figure presenting itself as an angel. It claims to offer salvation to humanity, yet secretly manipulates events throughout the story and is later revealed to be the second apostle of the god. The third apostle is Dawnstar, an artificial intelligence created by humanity to destroy anything that came into contact with Starkill. Its name stands for Digital Akashic Watcher and Neurological System Targeting Analysis Response. Kind of a mouthful. Connected to an orbital weapon system, it was designed as humanity's savior. It kills Nero, but is later infected, becoming the third apostle itself. Dawnstar fires upon the Starkill containment headquarters and eventually merges with Azazel, alongside Anima. The Seven Overtures also merge with the god, providing enough biomass for the apotheosis. The old body of the god is replaced with a new form, later designated AZ-002. It drains the remaining biomass from the United States before departing into deep space once more. By the end of the story, the United States lies in ruins. It is a remarkable story filled with unsettling twists, and as you may have already noticed, the entire narrative is saturated with references to biblical and Judaic texts. The very name of this quasi-god originates from the demon in the Book of Enoch. There, Azazel is a fallen angel who brought forbidden knowledge to humanity. The three apostles to me resemble an unholy trinity, the beast in the form of Nero, the dragon in the form of Dawnstar, and the false prophet in the form of Anima. Even their names carry deep symbolism. Nero is an obvious reference to Emperor Nero, known for his persecution of Christians and the moral decay of Rome. Some theologians even identified him as the Antichrist. Anima derives from the Latin word meaning soul. Dawnstar references Lucifer, the morning star, directly linking their names. The corruption and subsequent betrayal of the AI strongly echo the fall of Lucifer. In my interpretation, the altar symbolizes seals that must be broken before Armageddon begins. The temples correspond to the trumpets that escalate the apocalypse, and the seven overtures transporting biomass for Azazel parallel the seven bowls, whose outpouring triggers the climatic events of the end times. Within the lore, 1999 was not the first encounter between humanity and Azazel. He was allegedly the cause of the Great Flood, from which only Noah survived, of course. This implies that Azazel likely returns to Earth shortly before his own death in order to be reborn. The cycle turned once again in 2000 through the events described in the series, and will most likely repeat in the future. For me personally, Midwest Angelica stands as a fascinating fusion of biblical imagery and alien invasion, one that I highly recommend watching.
Humanity was attacked by a godlike ancient species called the Q.
All Tomorrows is a evolutionary science fiction book written and illustrated by Turkish artist Siyam Kozman. It was first published online as a free PDF in 2006 and has since circulated widely across the internet, gaining a kind of digital afterlife of its own. The book describes a hypothetical path of human evolution over the course of 1 billion years, including the emergence of new species, both through natural evolution and through genetic engineering. According to the book, the major turning point in human history in All Tomorrows is the encounter with a highly advanced race of intergalactic nomads known as the Q. Unlike traditional alien invaders, they are not interested in conquest for territory or resources. Their purpose is genetic mutation. At the core of their doctrine lies the belief that all other races are nothing more than a disease, threatening the natural order of the universe, and they see themselves as the doctors. They travel across galaxies, reshaping life wherever they find it. Physically, the Q resemble massive insectoid creatures with elongated bodies, thin wings, segmented limbs, and distant bead-like eyes. Their appearance evokes something between a dragonfly and a biomechanical organism. After encountering humanity at the height of its interstellar expansion, the Q won, effortlessly. Instead of exterminating humans, they began modifying them. Entire populations were genetically rewritten, reshaped into a variety of grotesque, specialized, or barely recognizable descendants. The extent of the horror inflicted upon a species depends on the magnitude of its perceived sins. Humans who surrendered immediately were castrated and slightly altered, turned into domestic animals. The majority of the already transformed humanity was subjected to experiments without any particular purpose. Some were merged with serpentine traits, others were reduced to ape-like forms, but the worst fate was reserved for those who resisted the Q fiercely. They were mutilated, transformed into limbless masses of flesh with faces intact, stitched together and installed as a living waste processing organism. Eventually, the Q were destroyed by what they themselves had created. The evolved descendants of humanity rose again, developing into a galactic-scale civilization once more. When they finally encountered the Q again, they annihilated them using advanced technology, bringing an end to their radical doctrine. The Q offer a far more realistic perspective on what interspecies contact between humanity and extraterrestrial civilization might look like. If a race possesses the technology required to traverse intergalactic distances, it would likely not view us as equals, nor as beings worthy of negotiation. The gap in development would be so vast that the very idea of contact becomes naive. From that standpoint, the chances of meaningful resistance would be virtually non-existent. Against a civilization capable of rewriting life at will, humanity would not stand as a rival, but as material. Gemini home entertainment is one of the foundational works of the analog horror genre. This series of YouTube videos is styled as old VHS recordings from the 80s to 90s, presenting chronicles of our solar system. According to them, at a certain point in the history of this parallel universe, a mysterious planet resembling an eye appears between the orbits of Neptune and Pluto. It is called, or perhaps calls itself, Iris, and it seems to serve as the carrier of some kind of virus or fungal entity capable of infecting other planets in our galaxy. Since its arrival, Iris has begun infecting Neptune, the rings of Saturn, and part of Jupiter. Because of the eye planet's influence, Neptune starts emitting beams that transport extraterrestrial life forms born on Iris. We're going to examine each of them. The smallest organism originating from Iris is the roots. These are thread-like parasitic entities that infect a host with a virus from Iris known as the deep root disease, which poses a fatal threat to the infected. At first, small bulb-like growths appear on the skin. Then roots begin to sprout from them, gradually spreading throughout the body. The organism's tissues are replaced with intertwined fibers, while bone structures deform and fuse together, rendering the victim immobilized. In the final stage, the organism transforms into a distorted plant-like form of life, completely stripped of its human features. After that, the body breaks apart, and something emerges from it. Woodcrawlers are extraterrestrial arachnid-like creatures originating from Iris. They penetrate people's bodies, and control them from the inside, using the human as a puppet. After the creature selects a new victim and leaves the body, what remains is an empty, distorted shell, a husk of a person. It can only repeat the same cries for help, remaining mostly motionless and attracting attention. But it's better not to approach them, because if you hear a fake person scream, it's likely the woodcrawlers heard you too. Gardeners are another form of extraterrestrial life from Iris. These octopus-like beings exist primarily to transport spores from their home planet into the deep layers of soil on other worlds. Their tentacles burrow into the ground and spread the spores, referred to in the analog horror as the garden. After infection, their mission becomes protecting the garden from intruders. The wretch also deserves its own spotlight. It is a colossal, swollen bear sacrificed to Iris during a ritual. It consumed numerous bodies and grew to the height of 2 transmission towers. At present, the bear is still alive and continues to grow. The appearance of the planet itself is also noteworthy. Shown in detail in the Crusader probe mission, a space program launched by humanity to study the intruder planet, it is revealed to possess organs such as a throat, an esophagus, a spinal complex, and even a conscious mind. The possibility of Iris having additional organs and a digestive system is also shown in the probe mission. Some internet users have noticed certain similarities between Gemini home entertainment and the progenitor of all analog horrors, Local 58. In Local 58, for those unfamiliar, the threat to humanity comes from the moon and the influence it exerts. It seems to drive people insane upon direct visual contact. However, Local 58, much like the moon from The Legend of Zelda, or Rare from Fear and Hunger, Termina, leans more into mysticism and cosmic horror, and does not quite fit within the concept of extraterrestrials, which makes Gemini a unique story. There's also the video series, The Moon Woke Up, but that one feels a bit unserious in my opinion. A smiling moon crashing to the earth? Yeah, I don't know. Going back into Gemini home entertainment, this pillar of analog horror gave us a fresh take on the overused concept of aliens, transforming them from a species-based threat into a biological one.